Last night was the Democratic National Convention, day one, and boy, was it trash. I actually didn't watch it, and apparently no one else did either because their numbers are in the gutter. But while the DNC was going on, there was something that Donald Trump noticed, and he put out an ad. He noticed that all of these Democrats kept saying, peaceful protest, peaceful protesters, Donald Trump attacking our peaceful protesters, peaceful, peaceful, peaceful. Let me tell you about peaceful protesters. Senator Lucas charged with 2 felonies for June incident at Portsmouth Confederate Monument. A Virginia Democrat has been charged with 2 felonies for tearing down or helping to tear down a statue. One of the felonies is a conspiracy charge. Amazing. A Democrat charged with felonies for a conspiracy to destroy property. Meanwhile, the DNC, they're all preaching about peaceful protests. It's all lies. They hate Trump so much that we can have 81 nights of rioting, 30 people dead, buildings being burned down, and Democratic politicians getting charged with felonies, and it is still Trump's fault, and they are still peaceful protesters. How long do they think they can keep lying to the American people? I wonder, because it seems to be working for some people who are just Trump derangement syndrome, but man, I tell you, at a certain point, don't you say, shut your mouth. One of your own party members is getting felony charges. How insane is that? Well, we got a bunch of other news. Last night in Portland, here's your morning riot update. They tried to flood the PPA, the Portland Police Association building, started a fire outside, and the cops just disengaged and backed off because that's what the cops are doing. And in New York, as they were rioting just the other day, romping through the city and smashing things, Cuomo, the governor, blamed the police for the increase in crime. I kid you not. This is the leadership you get with Democrats. And it's funny to say, but it's a fact. Absolutely. Let me just reiterate. I'm going to read you the story. We have leaders in New York City who they got COVID wrong. OK, so I'll call it out. Putting sick people into nursing homes. People died. It's on Cuomo. Shutting the city down, killing the businesses, supporting the protests, I'm doing air quotes here, which, you know, we had widespread looting. Now we have it across the country. They have this convention. It was digital. Some of these videos they did have like 1,000 views or less. I couldn't believe it. Nobody watched. So maybe to answer my own question, how long can they keep lying to the American people? Apparently they can't anymore. Here's the story. Senator Lucas charged with 2 felonies for June incident at Portsmouth Confederate Monument. I do want to give a quick shout out to myself, though. For those that don't know, I do have multiple channels. Check out my main channel at youtube.com/timcast for more videos every day at 4 p.m. I'm very close to breaking 1 million subscribers. That's why I'm shouting it out, because if you're not subscribed, please subscribe, and let's read. This is from wavy.com, which is a local news outlet. They say, Portsmouth Police Chief Angela Green announced during a Monday afternoon press conference that State Senator Louise Lucas has been charged with 2 felonies for an incident at the city's Confederate Monument on June 10th. She, among others, is facing charges of conspiracy to commit a felony and injury to a monument in excess of $1,000. Portsmouth officials held the briefing Monday afternoon to announce that several warrants have been secured against individuals more than 2 months after an incident at the city's Confederate Monument. Now, look, I'm no fan of Confederate monuments, okay? I just don't like people thinking they have a right to assert their worldview on others without a democratic process. You can't go around destroying things because you don't like it. I'm not a fan either. I think you got to have a vote. And this incident particularly, it's where the statue fell down and crushed some dude's skull. And that's on her because she was one of the organizers, apparently. That's why she's being charged. Now, this Democratic lady, she's like 76. I don't know what you do with someone that old, but look, just because you're old doesn't mean you get a free pass, right? So she's got to go to prison in some capacity. But I say in some capacity because what threat is she really? Maybe the answer is actually just to take away the internet from her or something like that. I honestly don't know. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on how you issue out rehabilitative justice or, penalties or whatever. But it wasn't just this. It wasn't just this Democrat. It was also people being charged, NAACP reps and public defenders. This to me is one of the craziest things we've seen. Because I'll tell you, when we saw these statues being torn down, I was angry. Where's justice? Where are the police? Arrest these people. The hammer's dropped. They're coming for you. if you're one of these morons that went around laughing and giggling and tearing statues down and jumping up and down like an idiot, you will soon get a knock on your door and they'll show you the warrant. Because now they're coming for all of these people. James Boyd. These next people are from the NAACP. James Boyd, Louis Gibbs, Lakeisha Hicks. We have a Portsmouth school board member, Lakeisha S. Clue, and 3 public defenders, Brenda Spry, Alexander Stevens, Meredith Kramer. This to me is absolutely insane. They say the police department is asking for help in identifying 13 additional people. Detectives are asking the public take a look at those photos and reach out if you recognize them. Call the Portsmouth crime line at 1-888 lock you up. Amazing. You can remain anonymous. They're coming, man. They say on Monday night, the Tidewater Solidarity Collective, a political community building project. Yeah. It's intersectional, social justice, whatever. Created a GoFundMe to benefit the 757 Solidarity Bail Fund set up by the Humanities Behind Bars. As of midnight, just 8 hours after police announced the charges, the fundraiser had already received $2,191. So do they actually have a link to it? They do. Let's see how much money they raised. See, this to me, so they've barely raised any money, but they're gonna arrest these people. The bail funds are gonna get them released. Here's your we'll move on from here. We'll talk about your morning riot update with none other than Mr. Andy No. After breaking inside and trying to flood the Portland Police Union building with a hose, Antifa returned later. They have now set the exterior of the building on fire. In an effort to de-escalate, police made no arrests at all tonight. Well, we have the actual tweet from Portland Police. This is all they do. You know what, man? I'm not trying to drag the Portland Police guy. I know they're between a rock and a hard place. But come on, man. Disengage? Let them destroy your building? Man. I want to show you this tweet from Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh basically says Trump needs to move in. I'm not sure I agree, but it is tough. It is very, very tough to sit back and say the cops have no support, the DAs won't prosecute, and the feds must do it. So I think Matt Walsh wants, I believe Matt's of the Daily Wire. Matt is basically saying Trump needs to come in and he needs to deal with this because people are sitting back looking at an ineffective president. I'll read you his tweets. Let me read you his tweets and I'll explain how I feel. He says, harsh reality. Trump has utterly failed to respond to the chaos in the streets in any kind of coherent and effective way. Society is coming apart at the seams, and far-left radicals are murdering people in the streets, all under the watchful eye of our law and order president. The yes men around him are telling him everything is okay. The yes men here on Twitter make excuses for him and applaud as he jumps off the cliff. But I hear from a lot of normal Americans every day in my emails and messages, and they are pissed, disappointed, and demoralized. Go into a hotly contested election against a fired-up opposition with a demoralized base, and that's a recipe for a landslide, historic loss. One that he will richly deserve if this continues. And that's the truth. Anyone claiming otherwise is rationalizing, and they know it. The good news is that this can all change overnight. Nobody remembers anything that happened more than 48 hours ago anyway. If Trump were to actually mobilize a real response and reassert law and order in our society, the momentum could dramatically change directions. I absolutely disagree. We have already seen the police in Chicago request federal intervention. We have already seen the feds intervene in some instances, like in the NYPD, where a man was accused of trying to snip the brake lines of an NYPD van. I think if Trump actually does deploy feds, they will run with that narrative again of, Trump's secret police. He never did it. And you can see how bad it already was. But it's not so much about whether it's the right or wrong thing to do, because we're talking about this from a political perspective, as Matt Walsh has framed it. There's 2 ways to look at it. What is morally right? Yes, I think Trump probably should come in and shut all this down. End of story. What is politically beneficial? Trump abiding by the law. So look, here, let me break it down for you. Trump doesn't have the authority to just send in feds to go in and crush the riots. He doesn't. That's up to the states and cities to deal with. There are some legal workarounds where Trump could say, invoke the Insurrection Act or assert federal authority because many of these people cross state lines. There are ways he can do it, but it still does kind of step on the toes of these local jurisdictions. I think politically, it's hard to say because the police are being jammed up, because the DAs won't prosecute. Trump maybe should come in and do the right thing, shutting these things down. But I don't know if it's right enough, right? I don't think there's a clear enough way to say this is 100% the right thing to do, because maybe respecting the rights of the states is paramount. And politically, I think Matt is wrong. I respectfully disagree, Matt. I think Donald Trump is doing what the president is supposed to do. He's not interfering with state and local law enforcement. And people are getting a glimpse now of what their leaders have brought them. Why would someone complain about Trump when their mayor was out there supporting in Portland? Why would they complain about the president when their governor was unable to stop all of this? And Trump has offered assistance to all of these jurisdictions. So I'm torn. I am. You know, it's hard to know what the future holds and how they'll use it against them. But for now, I think Trump is doing the legal and politically correct thing. And I don't mean politically correct in the normal sense. I think it is the correct move, both politically and legally. These people are going to learn. You voted for these politicians, and here is what you get. Cuomo blames police for crime wave. New York governor says cops must address lack of trust in communities as Big Apple shootings surge 82% and threatens to pull funding for NYPD if reforms are not in place next year. Wow. Talk about wow. Why should Trump, why should the feds, why should my tax dollars pay for the failures of these Democratic areas? I'm in New Jersey, mind you, and they're failures too. So I'm leaving. Not like I'm leaving to a different state. I don't think it's much of an improvement, but it is the middle of nowhere, so I'll take it. But you look at Cuomo, and do you think that Trump should bail him out? I'm not entirely convinced that's the right move. I'm not. I think Cuomo is the governor. The responsibility is his, and the people who voted for him. I'm sorry. This is the choice you made. Here's what the Daily Mail says. Governor Andrew Cuomo blasted the recent surge in gun violence in New York City and the state as an urgent crisis that he blamed squarely on police departments because they have done very little to come up with reform plans. He also threatened to pull funding from up to 500 departments across the state if they do not have plans in place by April 2021. Cuomo raised the growing lawlessness during his Monday press conference, where he revealed that in New York City, murders are up 29%. While shootings are up 79% year to date. He then broke down the percentage increase of shootings with each borough as compared to the previous year data, noting that shootings are up 60% in the Bronx, 102 in Brooklyn, 54 in Manhattan, 75 in Queens, and 108 in Staten Island. 108% in Staten Island. Where was Bill de Blasio? Why are you blaming the police who have been begging for the resources to do their jobs? Absolutely incredible. This is why the SBA, the Sergeants Benevolent Association, is endorsing Donald Trump. These people are completely ineffective, and boy, do they play politics in the wrong way. Some people have accused Donald Trump, saying that he's not doing what he needs to do because he's letting the Democrat cities rot. We saw, Trump tweeted the other day, it was a retweet from Brendan Strzok of the Walkaway Movement, who said, leave the Democratic cities, let them rot. Or he said, leave the Democrat cities, let them rot. The media then feigned outrage that Donald Trump retweeted this, saying, could you imagine if Barack Obama said something similar? I tell you what, man, it is not the job of the president to interfere in these states. It just isn't. And if he's saying you should leave them because of poor leadership, what are they complaining about? Is Trump supposed to just pony up a check to fund all of their problems that they can't fix properly? I completely disagree. This is New York's problem. It's a leadership problem, and the police know it. They've already defunded the NYPD. We're already seeing literally Democrats be charged with felonies. Why is that Trump's fault? Did Trump come in and appoint these politicians, these governors? Absolutely not. In fact, he hasn't even been in office for 4 years. He hasn't even been in politics for longer than 4 years. These people have all been in office forever, for decades or more, many of them. So how is it anything to do with him? It's not. But this is what we get. You get these videos from this is Donald Trump put this ad out of all of these, speakers at the DNC saying, peaceful protest, peaceful protest, peaceful protest. And then they'll straight up blame Donald Trump for all of America's problems. I'm done listening to this, man. I think it's BS. And I think there's only so much the Democrats can say before the American people are tired of the lies. That just a couple days ago, there were Antifa riots in Williamsburg, trashing Whole Foods in the Apple Store. I didn't even know this. It's so hard to track where the riots are breaking out. I kid you. I just unable to actually track where all the riots are happening. And so sure enough, New York, I should have caught this one. Nah, this was from the night before last. I didn't see it. But Cuomo has the nerve to say it's the NYPD's fault. The NYPD on Monday released its own shooting violence figures, which were higher than Cuomo's numbers, stating that year to date, shootings are up 82.1% and murders are up 30.2%. You cannot dismiss these numbers, Cuomo said Monday during a press conference. You cannot look at this reality and say it doesn't exist, because the reality is so clear. Cuomo said that in NYC, data show that more than 90% of the victims are black and brown. You want to talk about social justice? You want to talk about civil rights? You want to talk about social equity? How do you explain that, Cuomo said, of this substantial uptick in shootings with minority victims? Wow. It's not just New York City, it's all across the nation, Cuomo added. So you're blaming the police? It's happening everywhere. No, it's not happening everywhere. Let me take that back. It's happening in Democrat cities. I had a friend message me the other day from San Francisco, and they said they were leaving. They were finally done with it, and they were leaving San Francisco. And I said, why? Well, for one, the work is completely dried up. There's like human waste everywhere, as you know. People are sleeping, homeless camps are skyrocketing, and everybody is fleeing. Mass exodus. The same is true for New York City. Everybody is trying to move, to buy something somewhere. Houses under 400K are skyrocketing. It is happening across the country. Across the country in Democrat-controlled states and cities. We're not seeing this kind of stuff for the most part in Republican areas. There is a tendency, I will say, just to be fair, without citing hard numbers, the tendency is absolutely on Democrats. And they have the nerve to come out of the DNC and say it's Trump's fault. They straight up say these peaceful protesters and Trump is deploying the feds, and he's not. That's the narrative they tried. It's no wonder nobody watched the DNC last night. Shootings have risen in states and major cities all across America in recent months, with New York City and Chicago often reporting notably higher levels of gun violence incidents. The increase in shootings have coincided with the easing up of coronavirus lockdown restrictions, large-scale protests against police brutality, continued mass unemployment, and the natural annual increase in violence during summer months. Cuomo noted that NYC wasn't alone in having an increase in shootings, however. Upstate New York has also seen a 70% increase in the year to date. Now that is really interesting. In Albany, shooting violence was up 240%. In Buffalo, it was up 66%. In Rochester, it was up 54%. And in Syracuse, 130%. You're the governor, Cuomo. If all of this is happening around your state, how could you blame the police? It's happening in other cities. It's not the NYPD. It's you. It's your fault. You have failed your state. And Bill de Blasio has failed the city. As part of the effort to get the number of shootings down, Cuomo said that he was sending a letter to 500 police department jurisdictions explaining that it is imperative that we address this urgent crisis involving the tension between police and local communities. Like coronavirus, which was hard to deal with, he said, this is also a matter of life and death. And you threaten to cut their budgets. I'll tell you what. How about you increase their budgets? That way they actually have the opportunity to police properly. Give them better training, allow them better resources, hire, say, social workers. All of these things that the far left claims they want can be accomplished without defunding the police. But here's the problem. You see, the likes of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez chased out Amazon, costing the city billions of dollars. They've mismanaged their budgets. They can't sustain themselves, and they are falling apart. The cities are collapsing. And to be fair, it's not all the Democrats' fault, not all of it. They're just the ones leading the charge and failing every step of the way. There are a lot of factors. Technology is changing. People can work remote. COVID happened. Yes, I think they made a bunch of mistakes at the local level. That's on them, but they didn't make COVID. So all of these things are happening, and all they can do is scapegoat and blame everybody else. And I want to just throw it back. The sheer audacity of the Democratic National Convention to say peaceful protest 50 times when quite literally a Democratic state senator from Virginia just got charged with 2 felonies for rioting and conspiracy. Well, rioting, I say colloquial, not legally, just to clarify. It was for tearing down a statue. It's the Democrats, man. Have any Republicans been seen going out throwing Molotovs? No. Matt Gaetz got hit with a slushie, though. Some Republicans and cops, they get milkshaked. Journalists get beaten up in the streets, and a man was nearly killed in Portland. All under the watch of Democrats who are literally joining in And now we can say it definitively. We've seen Ted Wheeler in Portland, right? He goes out and he joins them. They're throwing explosives, and he's just standing there like, oh, I'm being gassed. Bro, they're throwing explosives all around you. You're just going to stand there? He leaves, and then they declare a riot. Call it out. Kate Brown, the governor of Portland, decries Trump's federales. Then you get the AG defending the riots. And now we quite literally have a woman in June. A Democrat was in the riots. Bravo, Democrats. This is what you've done. I don't know what their game is. I don't know if they have a game. I can tell you that the media plays silly games trying to defend them constantly. And they keep saying things like peaceful protest over and over and over again. At a certain point, I know they think if you repeat the lie enough, it becomes the truth. Maybe not in this day and age. We're in the information age. People have access to social media. They have access to YouTube. They can watch videos. And maybe the people just won't be lied to anymore. I looked at the DNC numbers. Man, I was shocked. I didn't believe it. I did not believe it. I'm gonna do a bigger segment for my 4 p.m. segment. So those on the podcast, you probably already heard it. But my word, relatively nobody watched the DNC. They are relying on the media to push out the select clips to make them look good. But man, the speeches they put out, like 1,000 views. And I'm willing to bet of that 1,000 people, half of them just clicked in and clicked out right away, didn't actually watch it. Isn't it amazing? I'm sure right now, by the time most of you have watched this, there's 30 or 40,000 people have already watched this video alone. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that to let you know I actually am kind of hopeful for a change to all of this. I'm feeling pretty good. When I saw that nobody watched the DNC, I'm just like, wow, the Democrat got charged with a felony. When I see the amount of people who are willing to watch my content, my shows and everything, hang out with me and my friends on the live podcast, I'm just like, maybe the regular people of this country are done being lied to and they want some kind of change. And I don't know who they'll vote for. I don't think it'll be the Democrats, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong. It could be wishful thinking. It could be true that we are the actual resistance pushing back on a lying, corrupt, crony establishment. I know the progressives think they're the resistance, and a lot of the establishment Democrats literally call themselves the resistance, but they're not resisting anything. They're quite literally the establishment. They have every major corporation on their side. The reality is there is a much smaller faction that is producing content, that is risking getting banned, risk of getting ostracized, getting fired from their jobs, to stand up against the crony establishment, to push back on what they're doing, destroying our cities, attacking innocent people. And that's the real resistance. You know, I don't care to call it the resistance because it kind of tainted the word, but the mainstream establishment people who think they're punk rock, you're the establishment. You're not punk rock. You know, you are quite literally the boring, nerdy, lying cronies. So we'll see how things play out. I got a couple more segments. More segments come later in the day. The next segment will be on this channel at 1 p.m. Stick around. I will see you all then. And don't forget, check out youtube.com/Timcast. It's my main channel. Please subscribe if you like. It's very, very similar content. It's more political and major stories. So subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see you all at 1 p.m.